Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about vocals, as you can see from the title and thumbnail. I'm not going to lie, I had to make it because I saw some bullshit on the internet and I was like, you know what? I need to get my 2 cents out there. I need to put my bullshit out there. Kind of wanted to talk about my thought process when I'm choosing plugins or whether I'm choosing a certain microphone or whatever the genre of the song is. So hopefully this helps you today. If it did, leave a comment below. If it didn't help you, leave a comment below. If it did or didn't help you, leave a subscription. I would appreciate that. Like, share, subscribe. Keep using my plugin links and all that stuff. My Z sounds, I'm not gonna lie, the plugin links have been going crazy. As you can see right here, hopefully I got this in frame. I was able to get this soft tube fader one, so I appreciate you guys. Keep going crazy with the links. I'm not gonna buy any bullshit that I don't need, and I'm not gonna make any bullshit videos on that. So anyways, I appreciate you guys so much, seriously. Couldn't have done it without you guys, and I still can't do it without you guys. So like, share, subscribe. Let's jump into Pro Tools and let's get to these techniques.
All right, so we're in Pro Tools now. I think that it's really important to, obviously listen. You gotta listen. I feel like people are so eager to just get in, start mixing, using their go-to plugins, go-to EQs, compressors, whatever. But I think obviously, and I'll show you in a sec, like the first thing you want to do is definitely listen. Like you definitely don't want to just start adding stuff just because you think that it needs 5 dB of 16K. It doesn't need any chest resonance, or you need to roll off at like 100 hertz or whatever the case is. I'm just giving examples, but yeah, I just think that it's important to listen, figure out what the song needs the vocal to do, and how to fit the vocal in the song and make it make sense. You know what I'm saying? Just because, like, obviously, like, usually, typically, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, especially for like pop and most rap, for an example, like you want that to be very expensive sounding, very clear, very crispy or whatever. But let's say something like a rock song, or usually, you know what I'm saying, or like, I don't know, if there was like a jazz vocal, like you definitely want that to sound a little bit more natural, maybe not as top endy. It just needs to fit the song better. It needs to fit the vibe. It needs to, fit the track. You definitely don't want to do something just because you do it in other genres, if that makes sense. So I think just like listening, and like I said, this is all, at the end of the day, this is all subjective. You can do whatever you want, but typically you definitely don't want to apply the same sauce to every recipe, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I feel like, especially these days, because the way music sounds and how advanced everything has gotten, and obviously, with social media and stuff, I just see like a lot of the same moves for every single song, whether it is a certain genre or whether it's a I don't know, because they are using a specific mic or whatever. I just think that, like I said, don't try to use the same sauce for every single recipe. You know what I'm saying? Like you definitely want to switch it up and make sure that it makes sense for the meal, makes sense for the dish. You know what I'm saying? But I think, listening, also, making sure that if you can, maybe get some information about the microphone or whatever. And I'll talk about this. Like, for instance, I'm 100% sure we recorded this on the Manley. Actually, I am sure because I can tell, because I know what the Manley sounds like, especially for this artist. We used the Manley on this, so I already know going in that it's already going to be a very airy, crispy vocal, which I'll play in a second and you'll hear. But me knowing that, I'm like, instead of adding even more EQ, what if I just work with the microphone and shape the vocal to fit in the track, but also make sure that I, retain that top end that was captured. I think, like I said, it's important to use what's already there and try your best not to add if it's not necessary, or try to remove if it's not necessary. And most of the time you are removing stuff, but you also want to do that in a tasteful way. You don't want to get rid of the vibe. You don't want to, get rid of all the stuff that makes that vocal performance in this case, because that's what we're talking about. So yeah, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's play it and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, this is a song, like I said in the intro or whatever, by good friend Liska. This is something that I mixed and mastered. It's been out for a couple years now, or I mixed and recorded it. I think Mark Daniel Nelson mastered this, or it was Sterling Sound. I can't remember. One of those mastering houses did, or people did it. But anyways, yeah, so if you want to see a full mix on this, let me know in the comments below. I have like a rough balance and stuff. I was thinking about making a video, but I'm only gonna do it if people want to see it. If not, then we'll just stick to this. But anyways, so let me play the song, the verse or chorus or whatever that I have looped. I can't remember what I chose, and just so you can get a vibe and really listen to the vocal, like listen to how much top end was already captured from the microphone. And then just kind of keep that in mind as you listen to it.
I don't need to worry, trying to heal my heart in a hurry. I know you know me better than I could. Don't go pretending you own the whole world.
Now, obviously, she's singing in a much higher register in her voice, so naturally, singers in general, and especially the way that she's singing, and even down to the key, what I'm saying, like all that stuff matters. But obviously, from what we can hear, it's very airy. It's very very top end heavy, but not in a harsh way. Depending on what you're listening to, I'm listening on these MX50s, so these are naturally just a little bit brighter, and a little bit scooped out in the mid range a little bit. So I got to keep that in mind, and also knowing your monitor source is very important. So knowing that if I add a certain amount of top end, then I know that it could either be too much or too little, referring to these headphones basically. But like I said, going in, we already know that it's very airy. It sounds like good air. You know what I'm saying? It sounds like good top end because, like I said, it was a Manley reference, a very good microphone. Not super expensive these days. I'm only saying because these days, because microphones are expensive now, more than they ever been, but to an extent. But the Manley, I would say, for the range and the category, I guess, of microphones that it's in, it's really not that expensive. And especially if you can find one used. I mean, I bought it used, so but I sold that mic a while ago. But anyway, so yeah, so let's keep that in mind. And like, we already know that the top end is taken care of, so we don't need to add any. And if we do, it would be in a different range. It wouldn't be in that very I would assume like maybe 14K and up, I guess. Let's just say 16K and up. It's very airy, so we already know that's taken care of. So let's kind of like work around that, or make the reshape the vocal around that to fit the track a little bit better. I'm gonna go ahead and solo the vocal. Let's start with the S's because it's very S-y. Obviously, like I said, singing in a much higher range, the vocal microphone that we used is gonna really enhance those S's a little bit more.
With me in my head, I think it's been a whole year since we met. I know you know me better than I could. Don't go pretending you. Why are you messing with me in my head? I think it's been a whole year since we met. I know you know. Why are you messing with me in my head? I think it's been a whole year since we met. I know you know me better.
I don't mind going a little aggressive with the de-essing, just because I know that if I need to bring some of those S's back, I can do that with the EQ, which is another point that I was trying to get to a second ago, is that because I was like thinking about that in the back of my mind, that sometimes I do like to, especially with these kind of vocals, I like to S or DS a little bit harder, just because I know that if it's getting too lispy, then I know that I can bring that back with EQ, with a much nicer EQ. If that is something that I need to do, or I feel like I need to do, I know that option is there. And then obviously we can back off the first thing you would do is back off the de-esser a little bit. So just something to keep in mind as well as you're shaping this vocal. But yeah, like I said, this is the first thing in my chain these days, is definitely trying to de-ess before I start doing any processing. Just make sure this is reset, and then just a little bit of SSL channel. Let's go ahead and dial that in. I won't really explain too much what I'm doing, just kind of see what I'm doing, and then we'll talk about it. So you can see that I added a little bit of top end to it. And like I said, because a second ago, like I said, I was trying to keep in mind that if I am de-essing a little bit too hard, or knowing that I'm going in and I'm going to de-ess a little bit harder than I would uh, if I didn't, I guess, is doing adding the 16K, especially with like this EQ from the SSL. I feel like it does a good job of kind of bringing back those S's in a much nicer way. Because the way I'd like to think about it is that, like, if I am de-essing a little bit harder, I know that with EQ I can bring up those already DS S's back with an EQ, if that makes sense. I don't know. That's the way I visually think about it as I'm working that way. Um, and I know a couple other people do too that I've talked with in the past. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense. That's kind of my go-to thought process with that. And that's pretty much it. She's singing pretty high up in her range. So as of now, I don't really, it's not necessary. There's no bottom end that's bothering me. There's no chest resonance that's bothering me. And like I said, there's a lot of vibe in that kind of thing. And I feel like a lot of that gets lost in a lot of songs, my personal opinion. So it's like, if I can keep that, as long as it's not bothering the song in any way, then it's like, why take it out? Especially, why take something out that's not even there? You know what I'm saying? And then just a little bit of mid range. I took out a little bit, just that nasal. Because if I want to bring that back, I can do that later. Like I said, with a much nicer EQ if I feel like it's necessary. And then a little bit of filtering, just at 70, 80 hertz. I'm not really sure where that's at. It looks like it's 70, but you never know with these kind of things, especially like in UAD stuff, because they don't give you any numbers. And then dynamics, I just like to see that first light blink. I feel like, especially with an SSL, I really like the compressor. I wish they would just make, they probably do have one, I just don't even know it, or I probably have it. But I wish they would just make a straight up just SSL single channel compressor for like vocals or something. There's just something about this compressor that sounds really nice. But anyways, yeah, I just like to see that first light, 3 dB of gain reduction, if that's truly what it is, turn on and stay lit for the most part. And then this is something that I've talked about in a past video. You can check out on my channel, is this mic pre setup that I have. I like to use this a little bit. I have this preset already set, so it's like level matched and everything, so I know I'm not fooling myself too much in any way. And that's pretty much it. Just just some simple stuff. And then we're gonna dig in with this Kirchhoff EQ. If I feel like it's necessary to go in and do anything too drastic, then this will be the EQ that will do that. But let's listen. Yeah, I mean, I don't, as of now, like I said, we're not really going and doing a full mix on this, but for what it is and this loop that we have looped, I don't really see anything like that's bothering me. And that's another thing too that I want to talk about, is like, just because you see something, like for instance, you see all this down here, and that's like, her register and that specific note that she's staying in, and that resonant or whatever. Just because you see it and it looks like it's an aggressive tone that's coming out doesn't necessarily mean that you should take it out or that it's bad. The important thing is that you're listening and you don't hear that. That's why, like, I know it's hard because I do it too, but trying not to let the visuals fool you into doing something that you're not supposed to be, or not supposed to be doing, but that you probably don't need to be doing, is, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Like I said, personally, me, and it's something to get used to for sure, is trying to embrace low end in vocals or whatever. Like, obviously, like I said, at the end of the day, depends on what the artist wants, depends on what the producer wants, depends what the song wants or what the song needs. But for the most part, if you can get away with it, I just feel like having a more fuller vocal, if that's the sound you're going for, that's like what you should do. I think I see a lot of people talk about fuller vocals and stuff, but then I see them take out a bunch of low end, and it's like at the end of the day, you're just trying to essentially fool your ears or give off the impression that something sounds fuller. You want to keep some of that low end in the vocal because that is what something fuller is going to sound like. You need some of that body, especially like in vocals. If, like I said, if that's what you're going for. But I just think it's kind of silly when I see the opposite happening when it's like they're removing body, but then saying that it sounds fuller because they added a bunch of saturation or parallel compression or whatever. I just think it can be much simpler than that, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, I did one EQ move up here, 1 dB, and then did some dynamic EQ, 4 dB. If that's really what that is, I don't know. But I'm just controlling that upper mid range, just a little bit more of that nasally stuff that I was hearing that was kind of poking through a little bit. But that's really about it. Like I said, for what it is at this moment, I think that's all it needs. And then let's do another round of de-essing just to kind of capture or hold on to what's poking through our chain so far. Oh, I'm in bypass. I tricked myself, see? So yeah, just pretty much taming or just kind of overall catching what was left out from this de-esser with a little bit of EQ that we did and a little bit of compression that we did, because compression is naturally going to hypen that top end a little bit, or at least it can, especially when it comes to S's or any sibilants, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So just kind of catching the last bit of that is the way I like to think about it. And then obviously, I mean, you can go in and hand DS everything, which personally, that's what I like to do. If I had time, that's what I would go ahead and do. But for this, it's like if we can at least get away with for most of it with 2 de-essers, which you should be able to if you're using 2. You just got to make sure that obviously you're setting the frequency ranges where they need to be. Then you should be good for the most part. But if you just want to go in and get that last little bit, definitely go in and hand DS everything. And then we'll finish it off with this tube tech. It's something that I've been using recently. LA2A is fine. 1176 is fine. Just been the thing that I've been wanting to use lately. So that's what we're going to use. And let me go ahead and restart this. Yeah, I think that sounds good. I mean, it's not doing too much. It's just kind of catching those peaks when she's like coming out on certain words or whatever, like really emphasizing certain words. Because like I said, I'm also just thinking ahead of time. The way that I like to work, the way that my template's set up, and the kind of workflow that I like to do, I know that eventually down the line, I'm going to be adding a little bit more saturation, that could potentially compress it a little bit more. And then obviously I have a couple more compressors that I like to use down the line. So, it's just like making sure that not too many plugins are doing too much work, but just doing the right amount of work that they need to be doing. I just don't, which is possible. And I have done it before, but if you don't need to have something rely or do most of the job, then don't do it. Especially if your computer can handle it. Like, I mean, this is like super light work. You might as well just take advantage of all that power and just, let everybody have their own job, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, nothing too much. And then just a couple dB of output that I brought back. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's just like my go-to preset that I have. Attack and release just straight up the middle. And then I have the what's it called, the attack and release set on manual, so I have control over everything using the newest, the modern version, I guess, of the Tube Tech, and then no low cut filter, and ratio is 4:1, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, that's that. And then let's go ahead and come down to this bus. I like using the little radiator just for a little bit of saturation, a little bit of console sound, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I just like what this does, and it also adds another layer of that top end that we've been talking about. And I'll show you. I have this preset called 5%. It's just the heat cranked all the way up, and then mix knob at 5%. And then I have another one that's 50, which, as you can see or guess, it's just the heat or whatever saturation knob, I guess technically, straight up the middle at 0, and then 50% on the dry and wet knob. And then we'll flip between both of those, and you can hear the difference. So, I mean, talked about this, like I said, like I've been, saying every video, but I've talked about this in another video more in depth. Pretty much from what I'm hearing, the 5%, obviously, since it's going to have the most coloration because it's cranked all the way, this definitely adds way more top end, a little bit more body, because, you have this box cranked all the way up, but you're just blending that back in, ever so slightly or whatever. And then 50%, obviously you're going to get a more even saturation or distortion, whatever you want to call it, out of this box, except you have a little bit more percentage with how much you're adding. So it's kind of two flavors, and basically the 50% setting that I have, to me, I'm hearing a little bit more mid-range, and like I said, the 5%, I'm hearing a little bit more top end and almost a little bit more mid-range, but not nearly as much as the 50% setting. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going with that. And then I have a little limiter set up. I'm using the PSP Twin limiter. No real reason besides the fact that I think this has a little bit of coloration to it that I like, and I just needed something, no real particular reason. I mean, that's really the only reason. I just like the first one that I just brought up and I kept, and it's been in my template ever since. So. So yeah, as you can see, you can probably notice with the limiter, what I'm going for is just catching those last peaks that are creeping through the rest of my chain, especially the compressor. I'm not looking to limit the entire vocal. I'm just looking to catch or tame those peaks, basically. And that's pretty much it. I'm really just mess with the ceiling. I have my attack and release. Attack almost pretty quick, and then release almost pretty slow, if that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I chose VCA and hard. I think this is like a default setting. It could be, and I just saved it as vocal limiter. And that's pretty much it. And then, yeah, like I was saying, I mean, going in with the EQ and stuff, because I know that what I'm going for, I know how my template is set up, that I know that I'm going to be able to add EQ with a much nicer EQ. In this case, my favorite and my go-to overall shape, especially for vocals, is the Spectre by Waves Factory. It is a EQ, but it adds with distortion or saturation, I guess is what how they explain or how they have it set up. It's not really an EQ, so you're not really adding volume with these frequencies. You're adding saturation or distortion or whatever it is. So it's boost only. It doesn't cut, which makes sense. This to me is a way to reshape your vocal, or in this case, the microphone, pretty much any way you want. I mean, you can make this thing I have a video coming out where I show you how to essentially mimic a C800 or something like that, a really nice expensive mic, with using this kind of tool. But yeah, I mean, I think with this, like if I had like a cheaper, vocal that was recording like a cheaper microphone, I wanted it to sound expensive, I would do something like this and add like the Spectre and reshape it and try to make it sound more expensive. And I'll show you the difference.
girl, don't go pretending you own the whole world. Why are you messing with me in my head? I think it's been a whole year since we met.
I mean, it's super subtle. It can be super subtle. I have my setting pretty subtle, but you can really hear it when she's hitting certain notes. Or what I like about it is that because it's saturation, depending on how much level you push into it is obviously how much is going to be affected. Some parts are going to be more affected than the others. So because she's a little bit dynamic with certain words, which can also affect, this is the whole thing. This can also affect how much compression you want to add, because if you want a more even signal into this, then maybe you compress a little bit more, or maybe you slam it through a limiter. That can really affect how the specter, or in general, how saturation or distortion can be affected, if that makes sense. So because we're not compressing too hard, or obviously not limiting into this, certain words are going to distort or saturate a little bit more. And I just think that sounds a little bit more natural, because if she is a little bit more dynamic on the microphone, naturally certain words or certain parts of her vocal or performance are going to be a little bit more saturated with that microphone, if that makes sense. So I don't know, hopefully that's making sense, but that's just the way I like to use this. And that's kind of the picture that I have in my head, knowing that is how essentially saturation or distortion should or can work. Just kind of having that in the back of my mind as I'm working into this box, knowing that I'm able to achieve a certain sound if I want to go for that kind of sound, if that makes sense. So I don't know, the Spectre Waves Factory, I don't know. I just feel like it's just one of those tools that you definitely need for shaping or something. So go check it out. Not sponsored, by the way, but if they want to sponsor me, you know what I'm saying, hit your boy up. It's a good plugin though. And then after that, let's just go ahead and start adding a little bit of vibe with some delay and reverb. I wasn't gonna do this, but you might as well, Oh, and then another thing that I keep forgetting, we got to copy these settings over. Realistically, obviously, I would double check the rest, which I'll listen to, and you want to adjust. You don't want to just slap your plugins over and just call it a day. Like, you want to still readjust your plugins for each performance. Just because it's recorded in the same day, same song, same microphone, doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to work. Like, you still want to fine tune. I feel like that's what's going to add character to vocals or to a mix in general. You just want to make sure that you're just not copying over settings and using the same settings. Whoops. But yeah, as you can hear, just adding a little bit of mono delay just for that front and back kind of thing, and I'm adding a little bit of slap just for that, stereo left and right kind of thing. Like I've said in my past video, I'm kind of just trying to put the vocal in a space, not trying to, send it out and mix with a really dry vocal, unless that's what you're going for. But I think that can sound kind of awkward sometimes. So you definitely want to just add a little bit of space around the vocals just to kind of put them in a space, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like obviously it's going to make them fit in the track a little bit better, because, with all these elements and all the production you're doing, those are also going to have their own space and reverb and delay to it, All right, then here is soloed.
Why are you messing with me in my head? I think it's been a whole year since we met. I know you know me better than that, girl. Don't go pretending you own the whole world. You tell me that I don't need to worry. Trying to heal my heart in a hurry. I know you know me better than that, girl. Don't go pretending you own the whole world. Why are you messing with me in my head?
So yeah, I mean, this is something that I remember watching a video on Greg Wells like years ago, him saying that with vocal effects like this, unless it's intentional, obviously, but with subtle effects like this to try to put something in a space, specifically these vocals or vocals in general, he said what he remembered learning from other engineers as he was learning how to mix and stuff is that he would never hear the effects like this. He would only hear them when they would hit stop on Pro Tools or whatever. That's when you want to hear the effects. You also you want to make sure that these effects aren't heard. They're kind of like felt, if that makes sense. So that, you know, ever since I watched that video, that's just something that I've been shooting for and that I always try to shoot for. It's like, I don't want the effects to be heard. I just want them to be felt, or, you know, kind of like put the listener in like, oh, what's going on? Like, why does this sound like it's in a certain space?
Why are you messing with me in my head? I think it's been a whole year since we met. I know you know me better.
Like, that's when you want to hear it. You know what I'm saying? When you hit stop.
Why are you messing with me in Why are you messing with me in my head? I think it's been a whole year since we met. I know you know me better than that, girl.
So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully this all makes sense. Hopefully somebody walks away with some new information, some new tips, or changes the way they think about you know, mixing vocals or whatever. But this is the way I like to do it. Like I said, you know, if I was like mixing this, actually really mixing this, you know, all the instruments and stuff will affect this as well. But just for this simple thing, you know, that I'm trying to show is that just the way that I'm thinking about these things as I'm mixing. But yeah, let me know if this makes sense. You know, let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Peace.